everybody. Nice to see you again. I don't know whether you're joining us for the first time on this topic or whether you've been following us for the last 2 weeks, but we're looking at how we can place our Bible stories into a bigger understanding of the way the Bible is laid out. I think this is going to be really useful to you as you do your own Bible study, or if you're growing up and going into services and listening to sermons. Where does everything fit in the Bible? So again, this big overview picture. Now, I've told you 2 parts of the Bible so far. We've got Genesis. Now, in Genesis was both 1 and 2. So it was the first 11 chapters was the first part, and then right up to Genesis 50 on the second part. Today, we're going to finish those first 5 books of the Pentateuch: Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So let's have a look a little bit about what we've done. Can you remember what the first one was? Yeah, if you've been following it, the first one is about beginnings. It's about God's creation and the whole issue of sin and how God dealt with that sin. The next one that we did, and this was the last week's one, was God choosing a family, and through this family he's going to reveal how he wants to relate to human beings that he's created and that he wants to love and to bless. And this week's is the next step on. The family has now grown big. We left the family just going into Egypt, and they're going to come out as a nation. So this is where we're up to now. Beginnings, family, nation. Just going to pop these away. Now, to be a nation, any nation, you need 4 things. So I've got here 4 tests to become a nation. Let's see how they fulfilled them. First of all, to be a nation, you need a population. You can't be a country without having people. Now, some nations are big, some nations are small, but there's always a population that a country needs to have. And we said that family went into Egypt. There are about 70 of them, and they were there for 400 years. What happened to those people in 400 years? Well, you would expect a tiny little group of 70 people to intermarry with the people around them in ancient Egypt and to practically disappear as an identity, but they didn't. And I think this is one of the kind of overlooked miracles of the Bible. God looked after the identity of his people, and they grew. Experts in the Bible think they grew to about 1 million people while they were in Egypt. And they kept that identity so strong that the Pharaoh of the time was actually quite threatened by them and tried to destroy them. His first plan was to kill the baby boys, and then he took them into slavery to try and get rid of them. So I think we can safely say that our people of the Bible have passed the first test of they've got a population. So what's the next test that they need? Well, we've started on that. You can't be a country if you're in slavery. You've got to be a free people. In fact, even today, there are people around the world that they have a population, but they haven't got the other things that would make them into a proper nation. They might be a people group living within another country, but they're not yet a nation. And so the next thing that God needed to do was to bring his people out of slavery. And we know that in their slavery, they cried out to God. God sent Moses, the story of those 10 plagues and the final escape from Egypt. And so they were free. Freedom is our next test. But there's something else that you need to be a nation. We have it in the United Kingdom, and every nation around the world has to have laws. You've got to have ways in which your rules for how your nation is going to operate. Constitutions and things like that need to be put in place. And one of the first things that the children of Israel did as they came out of Egypt was to go to the mountain where Mount Sinai, where God gave Moses the 10 commandments. So now they have laws. And they kept traveling through the desert until they came to the promised land. I'm not just going to tick that quite yet. Now they came to the promised land quite quickly, and I think you know the story. Moses sends in the 12 spies to spy out the land, and they come back, they say, yeah, the land that God has given us is a wonderful land, a land full of flowing with milk and honey. But 10 of the spies come back and say, but we're, the people in there are like giants. Their cities are huge. We can't do it. We can't go in and take the land that God has given us. And because of that, they spend 40 years in the desert. That whole generation dies out before they go back and they come to the border of the promised land again. And so God has given them a land. It's there for the taking, but they don't take it in this period of time that we see them. Because there's a final thing that needs to happen. These people are not just any old nation. These people are going to be God's people. And just like Abraham, Isaac and Jacob were God's way of being a light in the darkness, showing everybody around them how people that are God's people live, how God takes care of and looks after his people. The people of Israel now needed a renewing of that covenant. They were going to be God's people. And a covenant is that promise, we've talked about it before, between God, his part, and the people. And those people, they needed to trust and obey and learn how to be God's people. And the book of Deuteronomy has this thing. Now, Deuteronomy is mainly just Moses talking to the children of Israel just before they go into the promised land. And for 40 years they've been traveling around. God has been showing them over and over again fantastic miracles to keep 1 million people fed with enough water in a desert. Their clothes didn't wear out. Miracle after miracle of God's provision for them. And finally, these kids, these young people have grown up for 40 years, the new generation, and Moses says to them, "See, I set before you today life and prosperity, or death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God and walk in his ways, to keep his commandments, decrees and laws. Then you will live and increase, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away and you're not obedient, and if you're drawn away to bow down to other gods and worship them, I declare to you today that you will certainly be destroyed. You will not live long in the land you're crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. This day I call heaven and earth as a witness against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live, and that you may love the Lord your God, listen to his voice, and hold fast to him. For the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." So we're back to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. This isn't a new thing. This is the continuation of the promise. And there's the land. And there's a covenant. God saying, you're my people. Are you going to trust me? And the people did. They said, yes, we want to be your people. Yes, we will go into the land and we'll take it. So that's the story of the rest of the Pentateuch, those first 5 books of the Bible. It might be a small bit of the Bible, but it's a really important one for what's going to come as well. And we're going to look at that a little bit next week. Where's my challenge for you this week? Well, this part of the story, God's story, is all about being like a parallel to our Christian life. The New Testament brings out that being in Egypt can be a place of safety like it was at the beginning, but it's also a place where they were a place of sin, where a place of being like in the world, and God has called us out of there. We're called out of the slavery of sin. We're called to be different. We're called to be God's people, and we're called to a new lifestyle. God's laws are supposed to be a lifestyle. Jesus said the whole of that law can be summed up in love the Lord your God with all your heart, and love your neighbor, love other people like you love yourself. And God's calling us still today to be a light to the people around us, to show everybody around us the way that God blesses his people, blesses you, and how you choose to live in this world different and distinct from everybody around you. That's my challenge for today. See you later on Zoom, and I hope you have a really great week. Thanks for listening.